an active shooter. We have an active shooter.
Let's go ahead and declare this a mass casualty.
Welcome to Active Shooter, a podcast that covers the whys, the hows, and the aftermath of active shooter and mass casualty events.
They have an active shooter in the building. A second call says they are being attacked.
I've been shot.
169 San Easy, we got shots fired. 4:15 at Route 291. Sounded like an automatic firearm.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter,
mass casualty incidents.
Thank you for listening.
You are listening to Active Shooter, a podcast that may contain adult themes, explicit language, and graphic depictions of violence. Portions of this show may be traumatic for those under 18. Listener discretion is advised.
Information in an overnight shooting at the University of Virginia. That shooting reported at a parking garage right on the main campus of the University of Virginia.
A search on for the suspect behind that shooting. We have Local 10's Syra Anwar. She is in the newsroom this morning with more. Syra.
Eric, JC, we've now learned that 3 people have been killed and 2 others injured in this shooting. The gunfire prompting the University of Virginia to issue a shelter-in-place order overnight. Let's take a live look right now from the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. You can see the crime scene tape remains up in that area. Authorities have identified the suspect. They say is wanted in this shooting. And here's a picture of that suspect. He was last seen wearing a burgundy jacket or hoodie, blue jeans, and red shoes. So according to police, who is considered armed and dangerous, may be driving a black SUV with Virginia tags. UVA police are urging the public to call 911 if they see the suspect. In a Twitter post, they wrote, quote, "Do not approach." Is listed on the university athletics website as a football player in 2018 who, as a freshman, did not participate in any games.
The Active Shooter podcast will be undergoing slight changes in the way we share these cases with our listeners. Over the next several episodes, you will begin noticing subtle changes in the layout in which cases are presented. Our commitment to bringing listeners the full story, with accurate facts, remains the same. We will continue to honor the victims and their stories, while remaining true in our mission not to name the shooter, so as to never give them more notoriety than the people whose lives were senselessly taken too soon. We are all familiar with the run, hide, fight mantra that is taught in active shooter training. But what if there is nowhere to run or hide? How do you fight back against a firearm when your only weapon is your own 2 hands? This isn't a call for more guns, but rather a call for more thoughtful consideration as to how we handle accessibility to firearms and weapons in this country. The case being shared today was particularly frightening because of the location: a charter bus filled with college students, bright young minds who are and were our future leaders, doctors, teachers, athletes, and everyday citizens. Individuals who deserve the right to live their lives without the constant fear of a mass shooting, always looming. 3 students lost their lives, and 2 others were injured during the shooting at the University of Virginia, and their lives, and the lives of each and every other shooting victim, should not be in vain.
Active Shooter the podcast is a High Five Holly production, and I'm your host, JT. If you've listened to our prior episodes, you know that the Active Shooter podcast team has taken the No Notoriety pledge, and we will not be sharing the real name of the shooters that we cover. We will be giving the shooters a pseudonym and refer to them by that name throughout the episode. This will help in clearing up any confusion in the story, while remaining true to our pledge in not naming the shooter by their actual name.
We will refer to today's shooter as Fergus. The University of Virginia, located at 1827 University Avenue in Charlottesville, looked like any other college campus across any town or city in America. There was constant activity and always some type of event or function taking place. The coolness of the day transitioned into night, and by 10:30 p.m. on Sunday, November 13th, 2022, it was downright cold. The campus was mostly silent so late in the evening, save for the sound of a charter bus filled with students returning from a class trip to Washington, D.C., which was like a freight train, shattering the otherwise hushed tones surrounding the school. On the bus, however, there was activity among the staff and students, with some chatting amongst themselves, while others prepared to depart the bus, heading back to their respective dorms or off-campus residences. 24 students and their professor began their day, looking forward to their theater and dinner excursion. 24 students and their professor would not see their day end nearly as peacefully. The class of students attending the play, The Ballad of Emmett Till, were comprised mainly of those enrolled in the African American playwrights class, all except for 22-year-old Fergus, who was in a social justice class with the same professor. Fergus was invited along on the field trip, and he appeared very eager to attend, despite not knowing any of the other students. The play was the first of a trilogy about the 1955 lynching that helped to ignite the civil rights movement, but it's unclear whether the professor intended to hold additional field trips for the rest of the trilogy. After all, the professor had gotten special funding in order to pay for the trip, which included the theater tickets, food, and transportation. The group arrived at the Atlas Performing Arts Center on H Street in Northeast Washington, D.C. in time for the 3 p.m. opening. After the show, the students and their teacher went out to eat at an Ethiopian restaurant called Ethiopic. The field trip was meant to be sort of a bonding experience, and it was for most of the students. Fergus was the exception. He rarely spoke the entire trip, including the 2.5-hour bus ride back to the university, where he sat in the back of the bus and exchanged no words with anyone. Though Fergus had played football for the university in 2018, he didn't know any of the 5 current players who were on this trip. The football players were in good spirits despite a loss against Pittsburgh the day before the field trip. At approximately 10:15 p.m., the bus pulled into the university parking garage when suddenly, several witnesses reported hearing a male voice shouting, quote, "You guys are always messing with me," immediately followed by the sounds of gunfire.
Got up and pushed the bell. And then after he pushed him, he was like, you guys are always messing with me. He said something weird like that. But it was very bizarre because they didn't talk to him the whole trip.
Another witness later stated that they believed that the shooter had asked another student about a video game before inexplicably firing at his peers for no reason at all. Yet another witness, Ryan Lynch, said that she initially believed the sounds of the gun was a balloon popping, or a bag of chips popping. It only took a beat before the smell of gunpowder and smoke filled the air, instantly alerting Ryan that every student's worst fear was her current reality. Ryan dropped to the floor of the bus, doing her very best to conceal her body or play dead. Some students were sleeping when the attack began, and one such student never stood a fighting chance as he was shot while peacefully sleeping. Fergus walked slowly down the narrow lane in between the rows of bus seats, and, as described by another student, Fergus had a, quote, odd kind of swagger.
Once I got up and the bus was stopping is when the gunshots, started ringing out. In that moment, I knew we had to, get off that bus because it could get a lot worse. Me and another teammate were the only two to get off the bus. Mm-hmm. And I turned back and I look over my shoulder and I realized, we're the only two running. I didn't really think much in that moment. It was just literally an instinct and a reaction to go back. I mean, he was just so close and I felt so hopeless and so powerless in that moment. We locked eyes and that was it. It was just a cold look. It was, I don't know, it was just like a numb look. And, in that moment, I just dropped everything and took off running. I felt him hit me in my back, but I knew I wasn't going down without a fight, and I found a pre-med student. And that was God again. She was there to help me. She kept me calm, kept my breathing under control, was checking my pulse, and until the ambulance came.
After walking up and down the aisleway once, Fergus exited the bus, only to return moments later. He began firing the gun again as panicked students shouted, "Get off the bus!" There were many students who managed to escape the bus, but several did the exact opposite of running and hiding for their life. Rather, they stayed behind, trying to perform CPR or any type of life-saving measures they could think of to help the injured. Students who were shot or otherwise harmed were transported to the Culbreth Theater building, and by 10:39 p.m., a shelter-in-place order was issued across the campus. Petrified students waited in their dorm room, silently praying the attack didn't reach them, while simultaneously hoping their friends and other acquaintances were safe. Other buildings throughout the campus, including the library, had students inside and as such went into lockdown. In all, over 500 people sheltered in place throughout the university. The school's emergency notification system sent out an alert at 10:42 p.m. which read, "Active attacker, run, hide, fight." And during the lockdown, the same alert was issued through the text messaging system. Back inside the Culbreth Theater building, students from inside the bus were hiding in a bathroom and desperately trying to call 911. A student, after evacuating the bus, returned to triage the wounded students. 2 victims, Lavelle Davis Jr. and Deshaun Perry, were shot and killed on the bus, while the third, Devin Chandler, was shot inside the bus, but was rushed to a nearby hospital, where he ultimately passed away. Almost as quickly as the shooting started, it ended and Fergus fled the scene. A manhunt ensued with multiple police agencies involved. At 2:55 a.m. on November 14th, helicopters from various agencies flew over the UVA campus, scanning for signs of Fergus. Later that morning in Henrico County, about 80 miles east of Charlottesville, a local police officer noticed a vehicle matching the description of Fergus's car and executed a traffic stop. Sure enough, Fergus was found inside and was brought into custody at 11:24 a.m. The UVA police chief, Timothy Longo, was midway through a press conference when he was notified that Fergus was arrested.
"We just received information the suspect is in custody."
The shelter-in-place was lifted at 10:33 a.m. on Monday, November 14th, though classes across campus were canceled Monday and Tuesday. The Charlottesville City Schools were also canceled on Monday and Tuesday, along with the UVA men's basketball game that was scheduled for that Monday evening. Fergus was booked into the Henrico County Jail and subsequently charged with 3 counts of second-degree murder, 2 counts of malicious wounding, and 3 counts of using a firearm in the commission of a felony. The day after the shooting, police searched Fergus's dorm room and located more weapons, ammunition, and accessories, including a PMag with 29 rounds, a Winchester .223, a Ruger AR-556, a gun cleaning kit, buffer spring, armorer tools, a holster and backstrap, and black fingerless gloves. On November 16th, the Attorney General, Jason Miyares, announced that a special counsel would be appointed to investigate how UVA handled the various events leading up to and surrounding the shooting. The Virginia State Police eventually took control over the investigation at the behest of the UVA University Police. A preliminary hearing was scheduled for March 30th, 2023, and we will keep listeners apprised as the case progresses through the court system. 20-year-old Devin Keith Chandler was born on July 18, 2002, in Huntersville, North Carolina, where he attended the William Amos Hoff High School in Cornelius, North Carolina. Devin initially signed on to play football for the Wisconsin Badgers as part of their 2020 recruiting class. During that season, he played about 4 games as a wide receiver and kickoff return specialist, recording 2 receptions for 28 yards, and he also had 6 returns for a total of 156 yards. After playing 6 games with Wisconsin in the 2021 season, Devin entered the transfer portal and eventually joined the UVA football team. He was a junior at the time of his death. However, Devin won't just be remembered for playing football. He was known to wear a perpetual smile, and he loved to sing and dance. His outgoing personality always made others smile, and he got a kick out of making others laugh. He was a happy young man who was taken from this world much too soon. Deshaun Perry was a 22-year-old student who was in his junior year at UVA. Originally hailing from Miami, Florida, Deshaun had 2 more years of athletic eligibility remaining, and he had recently been wrestling with whether he should graduate or continue his football career as a linebacker. He was a studio art major and had a variety of interests beyond his sport, and though he excelled in athletics, earning the South Florida Conference's 2018 Defensive Player of the Year honor, he was an incredibly talented artist. Deshaun played high school football at Gulliver Prep School, where he shined as a linebacker, but he also played defensive line and tight end. In addition to football, he played basketball in high school. Moments before he was shot, Deshaun was on the phone with his mother, telling her they were almost back to the campus and warning her he needed to hang up because his phone was about to die. It must have been heart-wrenching hearing her son's voice minutes before his untimely death, and not knowing they would be the last words the two would exchange. Deshaun will be mourned by all that knew him. 20-year-old Lavelle Davis Jr. was born on January 7, 2002, in Ridgeville, South Carolina, where he attended Woodland High School before going on to play football for UVA. Lavelle was also a junior at the university when he was murdered. He was a brilliant student who excelled in his studies, but he was equally gifted with his athletic abilities. Standing 6 feet and 7 inches tall, Lavelle was an extraordinary wide receiver with amazing capabilities. He dreamed of playing in the NFL one day, and by all appearances, he was well on the way to doing just that. Lavelle loved spending time with his family, especially his nieces and nephews, and was a true role model for them. Being an uncle was a role Lavelle took very seriously, and he was proud to be an example of success for them. Described as humble, caring, and considerate, Lavelle will be deeply missed by every life he touched. Fergus was born on November 17, 1999, and was days short of his 23rd birthday when he committed the most hateful, vile act one human can inflict on another. His early years were spent living in various Richmond public housing complexes, places where it wasn't safe for children to play outdoors. His parents separated when he was only 5, and his father left them, which Fergus would later recount as being one of the most traumatic moments of his young life. Fergus had 3 siblings, and his single mother worked nights trying to make ends meet. However, this often left Fergus in charge, when he was really too young to shoulder so much responsibility. He'd walk to the nearby grocery store and purchase bologna and ramen noodles so he could make sure the other children were fed. When he was in the 6th grade, Fergus and his family moved to Varina, which is about 10 miles outside of Richmond. During his years in Varina, he developed meaningful relationships in the football community, which provided mentors for Fergus to look up to. But at home, his relationship with his mother was eroding until they were completely on the outs. During the years between 2013 and 2016, Fergus attended the John Rolfe Middle School, and sometime in 2016 he moved into his grandmother's house in Petersburg, Virginia. He was fond of his grandmother and enjoyed being with her, looking for ways to help her out, such as grocery shopping. Fergus was looking for a fresh start, expressing that his earlier mentors had truly helped him control his anger and outbursts. As one of Fergus's mentors would later state, quote, "He always had strong goals. He was ambitious, but his anger simply got in the way. I tried to help him understand that he was about to succeed despite his obstacles, and he can thrive from them. And by all accounts, it seemed Fergus was flourishing. He attended both Varina and Petersburg high schools and played linebacker and running back for his respective schools. While at Varina, Fergus earned the distinction of Student of the Year twice, and while in Petersburg, he achieved honorable mention all-conference honors during his senior year. He was also an active member of the National Honor Society and National Technical Honor Society, as well as the Key Club president. Fergus was also the president of the Jobs for Virginia Graduates Program, and was even selected to serve as a co-master of ceremony at Petersburg High School's opening convocation in his senior year. Football motivated Fergus, and he was happy to be so active and involved in so many different programs. Mike Hollins was severely injured in the shooting and was rushed to the emergency room in critical condition. Mike Hollis Sr. was in Fairfax, where he worked as a city bus inspector, when he got the call no parent can bear to endure. It was a miracle and blessing that his son was alive, and though he underwent 2 surgeries, he was soon reported to be in stable condition. Mike was shot in the back and stomach, and in typical Mike fashion, which was selflessness, when he was able, he wrote a note asking how his friend was doing. Because the college running back was in such great physical condition when he was shot, Mike's rehabilitation went exceptionally well, according to his physicians. Besides Mike, Marley Morgan was also injured during the shooting, but the extent of those injuries isn't known. Funerals for each of the 3 deceased were held together on November 19, 2022, with over 9,000 people in attendance, including UVA students and faculty, and community members. Head football coach Tony Elliott gave an emotional speech at the funeral. Afterwards, the families held their own private ceremonies. When he was 18 years old, Fergus was interviewed by a television reporter for a news story where he was recognized for his hard work in overcoming an onerous childhood to thrive in his teen years. In the interview, he described that when he was a child, his peers didn't understand him and bullied him, oftentimes because of his intelligence, and he didn't hesitate to fight back, which usually caused a school suspension, or attending alternative schools. One of his former classmates said that Fergus usually wore outdated clothes and shoes, and other kids teased and made fun of him for it. Kids can be especially cruel. We know this is true. However, it didn't seem to have the same kind of lasting impact on Fergus. In 2018, Fergus was playing football for UVA when he was forced to undergo rehabilitative and medical treatment due to a pre-existing injury, which caused him to miss several games, which can be devastating for a young athlete, and indeed, it seems to have effectively ended his football dreams. Despite his football career coming to an end, Fergus was still doing well academically, and in July of 2018, he was granted a $1,000 scholarship called the Dr. Porcher L. Taylor Jr. Scholastic Award. On November 17, 2019, Fergus was one of many UVA football players who were involved in a large bar fight at a local establishment called Asado. One student was rushed to the hospital as a result, but no one was ever charged due to the victim's unwillingness to cooperate with law enforcement. It's not known whether any of the students involved in the bar fight were also present for the shooting. On August 9, 2020, Fergus was arrested and charged with felony fleeing the scene of an accident after a crash that occurred in Petersburg, Virginia. The charge was later reduced to a misdemeanor failure to report an accident, and he was sentenced to a 12-month suspended sentence. In September that same year, Fergus had become known to law enforcement after he made some comments about possessing a firearm to someone who wasn't associated with the university. The reporting party never saw the gun in question, but they heard something suspicious, so they said something. Fergus had police interaction again on February 21, 2021, when he was stopped in Chesterfield County. He was found with a 9mm handgun tucked into his waistband. When questioned, Fergus said he needed the gun to protect himself and his family. The result of the traffic stop was a misdemeanor charge of a concealed weapons violation and again received a 12-month suspended sentence. He was supposed to report the conviction to the university, but he never followed through. On February 19, 2022, Fergus purchased a Ruger rifle from Dance's Sporting Goods in Colonial Heights. He returned to the store on July 8th and purchased a Glock 9mm pistol. As far as his academics went, Fergus seemed to be going backwards with his progress. In September of 2022, a college hazing investigation commenced, and it was alleged that Fergus was the student being hazed. Another student reported to school officials that Fergus claimed to have a gun, but he didn't make any direct threats, and no one ever saw the weapon. The university launched an investigation that was conducted by the threat assessment team, who spoke with Fergus's roommate, who indicated they had never seen Fergus with a gun. Their room was never searched, and the investigation was eventually closed due to Fergus's lack of cooperation. For the record, such an investigation should never, ever be closed because the subject of said investigation refuses to cooperate. The investigative team should have probed further. Fergus's younger brother was later interviewed and claimed that his brother committed the shooting because he was tired of being bullied, but he wasn't able to elaborate on who was doing the bullying. The brother stated, quote, "He just got fed up. Nobody was listening. He had nowhere to go. He had nobody to talk to. So he finally gave up. And that's life, right? Everybody's got their breaking point." Despite this statement, it seems Fergus had at least one sibling he could turn to, if that brother was so aware of Fergus's inner feelings anyhow. His mother reported that she spoke with her son the day of the shooting and that he acted completely normal, and even expressed excitement over his upcoming birthday. When she learned of the shooting, she tried contacting Fergus, but was never able to reach him. She had no reason to think her child would be the one to commit this act of terror. By this time in life, Fergus had reconciled with both parents, though he didn't seem to have much or consistent communication. His father reported that he spoke with his son about a month before the shooting, and that was their most recent conversation. He said that Fergus would sometimes come to his house to do laundry and just spend time with his dad. Fergus allegedly told his dad at one of their visits that he was having trouble with some kids at school, but he didn't elaborate, and it didn't seem like his dad asked any questions, because he said that Fergus still appeared upbeat and in good spirits. On their very last visit, Fergus asked his dad how he should handle the bullies at school, to which his father told him to just ignore them. Though he thought Fergus seemed a little paranoid and he didn't think he was hearing the full details or story about what was going on, he decided not to press the issue.
He was real paranoid when I talked to him about something. He wouldn't tell me everything. He said some people was picking on him or whatever. He didn't know how to handle it. I just told him, no, just go to school. Don't pay him no mind. Do what you got to do. Come on, you only had one more year.
About a year before the shooting, Fergus appeared in an amateur music video where he was holding a gun and rapping about what sounded like his own mental health issues. The video was uploaded to YouTube on August 15th, 2021, and featured Fergus with another rapper and people in the background, either dancing or pointing guns directly at the camera. Fergus rapped the many different ways he would kill people, including shooting people at a party, and another person he claimed he would kill, quote, in his sleep. The lyrics became a reality not long after. Fergus had other videos on YouTube, and they included other raps and music, going back to 2018. The videos always had people toting a firearm, though it wasn't as obvious if the guns were real or not. It should be noted that while this was clearly a planned attack intended for a specific group, football players, Fergus never played on the team at the same time as the players he murdered, so it's unclear and inexplicable as to why he selected those who did. There were 577 electronic files at UVA that were related to Fergus's involvements with the school's threat assessment team. A FOIA, or Freedom of Information Act, officer at UVA denied all requests to release the records, and as of this writing, the records do not appear to have ever been released. It's impossible to say at this stage whether the shooting could have been prevented. However, a thorough investigation shall eventually produce answers, and hopefully, continued accountability. We all have the unique ability to help prevent such a catastrophic event from happening if we keep our eyes and ears open and never hesitate to report when something or someone just doesn't seem right. With the delicate balance of mental health reform, education, active shooter training, and common sense gun laws, we may one day realize the dream that there will be no more active shootings. We pray that love will prevail over hate.
Too many have died. We should say to ourselves, not one more.
In the meantime, we urge our listeners to stay aware of your surroundings and keep in touch with your loved ones. If you see something, say something. You never know how many lives you'll be saving. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Active Shooter, the podcast. Remember, if you see something, say something. There's no telling how many lives you may be saving. A big thank you to Darren Curtis, who composed some of the songs on our show. You can find him online at www.darrencurtismusic.com. Make sure to check us out on social media. You can find us on Facebook at Active Shooter, the podcast, and on Twitter at Podcast Active. Thank you, and be safe.